Okay, so welcome everybody and thank you for joining us for today's webinar with Michelle. So I'm really grateful to Michelle for delivering this for us today. So Michelle is a customer experience expert and she's going to be talking to us about how we can grow our businesses through by harnessing our customer experience and using our customer experience to do so. So I'm really excited to hear more about it, and so I'm not going to carry on too much longer. I'll hand over to Michelle, and Michelle, just let us know whether you would rather we can ask questions throughout or whether we kind of leave questions to the end. How would you rather do it?
Well, I'm happy to take questions as we go, and there is a section at the end for questions.
Lovely, perfect. Okay, so whenever you're ready then please get started.
Okay, well, thank you, Joe, and good afternoon, everyone. I love talking about customer experience, so I really appreciate this opportunity. We're actually going to talk about customer experience management, and I'm only going to introduce 3 chapters of a much longer presentation. Very happy to take questions as we go along, as I've said, but also your ideas and thoughts and how you think this might be applicable to you or how it might not be applicable to you. Get a little bit of a conversation started. Each chapter has a name and a number. Now, chapter 1 is my favourite because chapter 1 is our scene setting. And these emphases on the slide are so important. We need to think about who is our customer. Is it somebody who buys your product or service, or is it somebody whose needs you satisfy? Anybody want to pitch in there?
Well, I'd probably say technically both, but the way probably is best to think about it is someone whose needs you satisfy.
Yeah, I think most productive and most customer oriented to think about someone who needs you satisfy. If you start with a product or service that you then sell, the customer is coming last. If you start with a customer whose needs you satisfy, the product or service is designed around your customer.
It is. I mean, in terms of that, is there an evolution of that as well? When I first started my businesses, people just believed in what we were doing. So they became customers to support a wider vision because they believed it was correct. So does that go across both boundaries?
Well,
they bought into
look,
me.
as Joe said, a customer is somebody who buys your product or service, and there's always got to be an element of you, of your vision, of your passion, of your values in that product or service. Otherwise, it's going to be the same as everybody else's. But if you stop at just your vision, your passion, your ideas, then the customers won't have their needs met and they will look elsewhere. So it is both. Yep. But one without the other will actually trip you up. Okay. That needs word is a bit kind of what's the word? It's a bit controversial. I say needs, other people will give you a big long list. They'll say expectations, wants, desires. And what I say is, don't think about all those words. Just think about what it is that will make my customer buy from me, what will make them buy again, and what will make them recommend my business. And those are the customer's needs. Expectations are a little bit different because expectations tell you about what they bring in terms of mindset, but I still think expectations are even a subset of those needs. And rather than thinking about expectations, needs, desires, wants, what I really encourage people to do is think about needs and think about them in 3 senses. We start with the functional need. And this is about the customer's job to be done. So job to be done is the reason somebody stops what they're doing, puts down their book, walks out of the room where their kids are playing, stops doing the gardening, stops doing the things that they enjoy doing and engages with the business. That job to be done is the thing that's important to them, that encapsulates their need. But what you provide is actually wider than just the job to be done that your product or service supports. It's all of the interactions that gets the customer from awareness of their need through to being happy about a job well done. So even if we think about jobs to be done, we can actually see that it's broader. It's waking up in the morning and thinking, I need a new pair of socks. That is when the customer's journey starts. I need a new pair of socks, their awareness of need. Their journey ends when they go, oh, I've got nice cozy toes now. As a sock manufacturer or sock retailer, you're involved in very few of the steps along there. But that functional need to buy a pair of socks has something behind it. And if we can understand that, we can better meet customer needs. And if we understand all of those touch points on their journey, we can also understand how we can become more attuned to that broader set of needs. Now, the broader set of needs can be split quite neatly into two. We've got their psychological needs, how the customer needs to feel about getting their job done. Also, how they need not to feel about getting their job done. So we're talking about not frustrating our customers, but making it easy. We're talking about giving customers the choices that enable them to buy the right product, but not so many choices that overwhelmed. We're talking about when we promise a delivery day or they walk into a shop, they're not stopped from doing another job waiting for us to do ours. So psychological needs are emotional, they're personal, and they're contextual. And they embody some of those expectations, some of those things that people bring from other customer experiences. And the third kind of need is a social need. Now, this one's really interesting because this is one that gets a little bit overplayed in some areas and a little bit underplayed in others. Social needs are how customers want others to perceive them. And they have always existed. I'm quite interested in archaeology, and what I see every time I see a dig in a museum or on a TV show or something like that is there's some ancient jewelry, there's some weapons. And they demonstrate that need to project social status, not just in life, but even in death. Social needs have always been with us. And the last two, those psychological needs and the social needs, are what we play with when we do our marketing. So you may have heard the expression, we buy emotionally and we justify with our intellect. And you've probably also looked at other people and gone, wow, why did they buy that? Well, those are the psychological and social needs at work. And they show us that every customer is individual, and those psychological and social needs, even if you've got 80% in common with somebody, that 20% difference can lead to a completely different decision and also a very different perception of your business. But then we have another dimension, which I think we have to add into needs, and that is when we look at roles. Now, Christy, you're a B2B person, I take it. And Brittany, you're B2B too, I think?
Yes, we are.
Absolutely. And Brett, you too? Yeah. So it's easy for B2C, isn't it? You just go, yeah, B2C, it's the person who buys your stuff. But in B2C, it's not that straightforward, because you have different roles even in B2C. You have the person doing the DIY and the person living in the room they decorate. We've all been there. The parents buying the food and the children consuming it. The person organising an event like a birthday meal and the birthday boy or girl and their guests. And they all have different needs. Of course, when we get into B2B, those roles become even bigger. We have buyers, we have budget holders, we've got people who are accountable for the job and the people doing the job, and so many more. So we have functional, psychological and social needs. We know they're contextual, and even the functional needs change by role. So whether we're marketing, whether we're selling, whether we're delivering, whether we're reminding people of the value they've got, we have to think about all those needs and all those roles. So just to give you a couple of examples of that, a business buyer, the person who's buying the service as opposed to the person using it or the person holding the purse strings, might have a social need to be seen as successful. They might be looking for a promotion. They might need their bonus this month and they need to come in under a certain spend. So you that social need might actually be more pressing than some of the other needs we might identify. A budget holder, on the other hand, might only care about their functional job. They might only care about managing price. I don't care how nice they are, I don't care how reliable they are, so long as we spend £10.32 this month and less next month, I'm happy. So really getting into that is quite important, but it's also scary, because one minute you're working on your business and the next minute somebody like me comes along and does that awful hollow Willoughby thing, sorry Brittany, won't mean anything to you, and says, how does your customer feel? But it's actually really important, because customer experience management is the best way to win customers, retain their custom, and earn their recommendations. Now, before I prove that to you, do you have any questions about needs? Any thoughts about needs? Any needs you see your customers having? Sorry, Joe.
I was going to say, I think my customers, what I find quite difficult is the needs that they have versus what they experience, and their, I suppose, so it kind of fits in with their expectations of what you were talking about before, is quite far apart, and almost for there's quite a lot of sort of education around why they would even need what I do to solve the problem that they think they have, because of the problem that they really have. Does that even make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of people will say customers don't know what they need, and depends which day you catch me. Yesterday I typed that out and I thought, hang on a minute, most days I'm telling people that's nonsense, so why have I just typed it? And the thing is, customers, we as humans, have something immediate in front of us that we go for. Sometimes we've reflexively, oh, I don't know if that's a word, we have with our reflexes decided that's the thing we need. Sometimes we've stepped back and thought things through. Now, the way our brains work, our system 1 and system 2 thinking, means that we rely on heuristics or biases to make quick decisions, because that saves energy in our brains. And sometimes we say what we need or what we want or what we expect instinctively. When we do that, not just customers, but us too, when we do that, help to unpack that need is really, really vital and very, very important. And that's why we see consultative selling. That's why we see websites describing their products in 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 different ways. It's why we get the focus between function, benefits, outcomes. Because some people are actually, you know, marketeers will tell you, no, benefits and outcomes. But some people are actually looking for functionality because they've already worked out what they need. So whether we're marketing or selling, we have to be able to help our customers. We have to either respect that they've already decided something and explore it, or help them unpack it further. And do you know what? It's normally somewhere in between. That makes sense, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So anybody got a need they'd like to share with me, or well with the group, a need of that a customer's come up with recently that maybe you don't understand? No? Well, oh, go on, Brett.
No, I was going to say, from my perspective, I talk a lot about this with our members, about understanding the needs of the actual client, and the thing you're selling may solve the need, but not necessarily how the immediate problem you're selling is actually a bigger problem off the back of it. So I think the bigger problem is how it's articulated, where basically people are, I mean, let's face it, okay, I run a business organization that supports business owners both Joe and Christy are clients of mine. And off the back of that, it's a case of, regardless of all the events, all the basically the support we give, the self-serve knowledge, the blah, 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 all the things, all the features, all the benefits, all the things we do, in reality, what we're doing is solving a much deeper problem of, well, what are Christy and Joe looking to achieve? And that's about, and the other 100 odd members as well, of what are they looking to achieve? And a lot of it is, oh, I need to drive more sales. But the actual problem is actually, well, why do they need more sales? It comes down to either money or lifestyle or other things. So it's actually going deeper on those kind of areas. So it's interesting.
I agree, Brett. But we do have to be careful about going deeper. I once met, and I apologise to Brett, but I think the other women in the room will get this. I once met a man in a meeting, and he proceeded to tell me what needs were. And he said, so if somebody wants to buy a drill, is that their need? No, that's not their need. Their need is they need to put up a picture, and that's not their need. They need to make their house more presentable, and that's not the need. It's their wife nagging them. And I was like, well, if you want to pile assumption on assumption, you go for it. But I'm going to stick with the need is make a whole. And I think we have to be careful what problems we can solve. So I wouldn't expect somebody training me in sales to understand my lifestyle requirements, but to understand that I need to make X amount of money in order to fuel those lifestyle requirements. Does that make sense, Brett? I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that there's a point at which you get no more value from going deeper.
Okay, well, when we have once more, we'll discuss that in further detail.
Well, we've got a chat coming up, haven't we? So that'll be good.
I think it's just using it in a different means, though, because that helps. What Brett's saying helps to identify where those people might be, or might, like, how you kind of go about finding them or speaking to them in a way. So I suppose it's not being narrow on that's the only people that will need a whole, but like that it's a way of accessing a group of people that might need a whole. So it's kind of sort of being a bit like, it's following that line to think about, okay, well, what are the commonalities of these people that need a whole, and so where might they be, and how can I speak to them in terms that they're going to be able to relate to. So yeah, kind of following the line, but being open with it still.
You're absolutely right, Joe, but as soon as it's how do I speak to them, what channels, what messages, then that's marketing. Yeah, and you might need to go deep. You might need to go deeper for marketing. I don't disagree. But okay. 99 times out of 100, I'd say customer experience doesn't care what channel, doesn't care what message, it cares about whether we meet that need. So with marketing, you might say, right, I need to be on all 5 channels, Instagram, Facebook, I have a web adverts, blah, 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 because marketing's done that in-depth thing. Customer experience is, when somebody gets to that channel, are they finding the information they need? Yeah. Can they get their job to be done, which is finding information, going to the next step, without using the dark patterns. So dark patterns are where we overplay some techniques in marketing. It's a UX term, and it's where Amazon is slated for it. You know how you always end up signing for Prime by accident? That's considered to be a grey pattern. It's something where they have purposely made it very hard to not sign up for Prime when you check out. So when we want to know who we're talking to and how we're going to talk to them and how we're going to get them into our funnel, that's marketing. When we're asking whether we've met their needs in that stage of the journey, because their journey need is not, I need to read some marketing. Their journey stage is, I need to find out how to resolve my need.
Yeah. And
then in customer experience, we say, are we meeting that need, which is the need for information, the need for comfort, the need for confidence in what's being sold.
Yeah, So what I might be jumping ahead here, Michelle, sorry if I am, but because I get a lot of my clients, because of exactly the nature that I said earlier, what they're experiencing at the beginning and what actually needs to be kind of resolved as part of the process that we go through are quite not necessarily different, but it's a lot deeper than what's they're kind of experiencing at the beginning. They quite often get, so I have feedback forms that I get back from my clients after we've done a package, and so I'll quite often say, like, one of my questions is, what were you looking for when you first came to me? And then and then we kind of unpack what they got as a result of it, but it's often what they came to me for in the first place, and then what they got as a result of it is quite different. And they even say that, like, I got so much more, like, it's, and so that's I understand completely what you're saying about marketing versus the customer experience, and interesting just a reflection, really, because it's like, I have met their needs, but they didn't even know they had that need in the first place. It's kind of only as we've explored it further that we've kind of
your service and Brett's service isn't in my service, for that matter. If we have a range of people, from somebody who sells pens, where we all know the need, to the very far end, you guys are much further along than me, because it's not clear cut what the need is, what the functional need is. So you do unpack, you learn more, you unpack, you learn more, and that's actually your service. But I think with Christy and with Brittany, it's more, well, people know they want a Zoom meeting, people know they want some heating and cooling. So I'm not saying that it's not those things at all, Joe and Brett. It's just that understanding where you are in that range is important. And most importantly, and getting back to the slide, it's about your intent. Because if your marketing is there to get somebody into your funnel, you will market differently to if your marketing is there to answer people's questions. And that's the same two different perspectives on that. Call it inside out thinking for the top, and outside in thinking for the bottom. And it's that flip. It's about the intent. It's about whose perspective you're looking at this touch point, this interaction, this piece of content from.
Yeah, because again, I agree when it comes to, certainly with Joe, with being a coach, you're somewhat listening between the lines, between what's being said, because let's face it, that we all come and think we've got this issue, but actually, as time goes on, and at the end of the day, if that person has moved further forward, then that's what they came to you for, isn't it, really? Is to move, whether it's just that one step further, some form of growth that they were looking for. They just didn't have the right words to tell you, this is what my problem is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, spot on, Christy, and that's why I find marketing what I do really difficult.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult because it's so personal. So you've got a lot of that psychological need going on. You've also, as we've discussed, Joe, got a lot of those social needs going on about people don't want to talk about it. And because you know your search engine's going to put up ads. If you search for it, people don't search for that kind of support. It's very similar in customer experience. People don't search for customer experience. And nor do they search for churn or any of the other words. And I think there are some problems or needs that people are very happy to research, and some that they just don't go near, and getting to those people is quite difficult. And I have exactly the same thing as you guys have, but I say the difference is when you're coaching, the service you're providing is actually to help people resolve the root cause, not just the presented cause. So it's the same with medicine, it's the same with psychology. It's, like you go to a dentist with a toothache, the dentist doesn't then spend 10 minutes asking you all sorts of weird questions, the first thing they do is they get you in the chair, they look at your tooth, and then they ask the questions. They reassure you that they understand you've got a toothache. They see if they can see anything immediate, and then they look for underlying causes. You guys are doing that. I do that to some extent. I had a client last month who wanted to know how many people liked their product, their service. And it was quite funny. I said, well, I can do that, but so can anybody. And it's not what I do. What I can do is I can speak to your clients and find out what it was about your service they liked and what you could do better. So I did exactly what you said, but that was part of designing my service, if that makes sense. So there's great everywhere, and marketing and customer experience of Venn diagrams you can draw in any which way. All I'd say is if you've got an inside out thinking for anything you're designing, it's less likely to meet customer needs. If you can flip that perspective into that outside in. So are they buying your product or service, or are you meeting their needs? Are you looking to fill your funnel? Are you looking to answer their questions? And there are all of those flips for every single aspect of what we do with our customers. That making sense for everyone?
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I love the conversation, so thank you. Much better than me just telling you what the slides mean. So thank you for that. We're ready to move on to the next slide. I promised you that customer experience management helps you make more money, it generates more revenue, all sorts of different things. Is there any proof? Well, there is, and this is what I'm going to show you. Joe's already seen these pictures. Customer experience results in more revenue. It results in higher profits, and it results in an easier job in sales and marketing. Let's take those one at a time. For revenue, HubSpot, I think most people here will have heard of HubSpot. It's a CRM, MarTech technology. Excuse me, all sorts of reminders have suddenly started popping up. Yeah, so HubSpot found that 93% of customers are likely to make a repeat purchase with companies who offer excellent customer service. So what they asked is, if you've got two companies, one with excellent customer service and one with just good customer service, 93% of people will go to the one with the excellent customer service. The second one on here talks about higher profits. Now, higher profits one is interesting. The data comes from the Harvard Business School, and it shows that an increase in customer retention in 5% can result in an increase of profit from 25 to 95%. Now, I've always felt a little bit uncomfortable with that actual data, so I've looked into it a little bit more, and what I found is it's actually some people call it a thought exercise. I'll be a little bit more polite. It's actually taking customer data and looking at a lot of companies and saying, if retention had increased by 5%, what would the profit have increased by in each of these companies? And they worked out it was between 25 and 95% increase in profits. Just keep saying that because it is quite an interesting number. Now, the last figure on here is where we look at sales and marketing, and Zendesk, who we all have heard of because they pop up in the corner of the screen right when we're trying to get some work done on a website. Zendesk found that 78% of loyal customers help spread the word about businesses. Now, you're going to see that stat in a million different formats, a million different numbers. It's all down to the question that is asked. Here, they were specifically asking loyal customers. So it's 78% of loyal customers. It comes out to about 15% of all customers. So that you do see that other stat elsewhere. So that is increased revenue, higher profits, and lower costs in sales and marketing. The last piece of data is that Bain & Company, who are a huge international consultancy, they management consultancy rather than strategic. They do all sorts of different subjects, but they have got a specific customer experience department, and they worked out that companies that excel at customer experience management grow their revenue 4 to 8% more than their competitors. Now, they have done that by looking at assessing customer experience management and looking at revenue in comparable industries. So that's a data-based statistic. Do we have any questions about that or any thoughts? Would you like some of it? Go on, Brett.
I was going to say, I mean, in terms of this, it's you're talking my kind of language. It's something that I took to a previous organisation many years ago, because all I did was engage with my clients and acted as a conduit to help solve the problems they had. I didn't have the answers, but I knew who could actually solve it. And instead of actually adopting this technique, because all my work came via, it still happens now. I built a business around it. Basically, comes from my recommendation and networking, which the two are actually so closely linked. It is unreal. And instead of actually adopting it, because those times my figures were going through the roof, but I couldn't do anything because my hands were tied because of the systems and processes in place. So instead of adopting it, I got threatened with a sack. And it was one of these things that the happier you can make your clients and the easier you can make it for them to actually spread the word and work that actively, the more likely they are going to do it, and that makes your life a hell of a lot easier and your business more profitable.
Absolutely. Oh, honestly, Brett, I work with 4 different types of clients, and my third segment, so to speak, I call my growers. They're the people who look at customer experience management and say that can help us either overtake the competition or retain our lead. People who are not using customer experience management as a lever to growth are really opening themselves up to being disrupted by competitors.
I would actually say even more than that. It gets to a point now that I mean, Christy, you're a relatively new client. Joe, you've been a client now for nearly 2 years. The extent we will go to help support our clients means, in theory, we have no competition anymore, because my industry doesn't do it.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
invented a completely different industry, because this is not about just supporting business anymore. It's actually about basically creating a community. This is what the game's about. And the more you go down the rabbit hole, the better it gets, and the more it's like a drug. The more you want more of it, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going, and that's a massive difference off the back of it. So yeah, I'm an advocate of this. I'm always wary of stats, because you can make stats look at whatever they need to do, especially when there's a range of 25 to 95. So in other words, they went, okay, well, there's 30% we can't account for, so we'll be outside of those. But in terms of that, I agree 100%.
Yeah, that stat is tricky, but it's hard. People don't. Coming back to what I said earlier about people often don't know that they need customer experience, and I think you've touched on it there as well, Brett. People like you who are using customer experience to disrupt and to create new industries, I call, strangely enough, differentiators. People who listen to the customers and move on.
Most people in the arse, but apart from that, yeah.
I read a story this morning about a cab driver who was sick of complaining all the time about being a cab driver, and he looked around and he saw all the other cab drivers had dirty cabs and they were all complaining, and he said, well, it's up to me whether I complain or whether I grow out of this. So he cleaned his cab, and he started asking customers what they wanted in the cab. Do you want to chat? Do you want quiet? I've got some magazines. And do you want some water? He's in India. He offered them lassi. And he now has people going back to him. He has people phoning him up, not just hailing him on the street. I don't know how old the story is, by the way. And I think recognizing customer experience as that disruptor it's at the top end of my maturity model. At the bottom end are people who do nothing. And my very first real category are people who do nothing more than fix what customers are complaining about. So there are various levels, and I'd say that each of these stats tends to be at the more mature level of customer experience management, which is, of course, another one of the hidden factors behind the stats that nobody ever talks about. But I noticed Brittany came off mute. Brittany, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of touched on it. Us as a company, we're kind of that third group of your clients that you discussed, that we're using customer experience to really outdo competitors. You know, we are looking for, you know, things that our competitors don't necessarily do that make, you know, our customers' lives a little bit easier. One of our core values as a company is to be easiest to do business with. You know, something that's going to set us apart, you know, from those competitors, which, you know, really highlights that Bain & Company stat and that HubSpot stat that you have on the slide here. You know, I think those are great, you know, stats to have on there.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear, Brittany. And it really does show when businesses pay more attention, and it also shows when they do something with it. There's been a big almost a meme going around the CX community because there was a bank that focused on its NPS score, focused on a single metric. The metric comes from asking the question, would you recommend our bank to your friends and family, clients, customers, colleagues? And they focused on that, and they had the highest banking NPS in the world, and they went bust. It's all about balance. It's all about not just measuring something, but doing something with the data. And it's about remembering that your business and your employees are actually as important as your customers. Your business can only serve customers if it stays around, can only meet customer needs if it can afford to invest. Employees, happy employees deliver great customer experiences. Businesses that focus on customer experience management engage their employees to deliver that, and they create engagement and better engagement, better empowerment. So all three of those do need to be balanced, and I'm certainly not one of the customer experience consultants who will talk about customer centricity, because I think focusing just on one aspect of your business is as dangerous as failing to focus on one aspect of your business. So are we all happy-ish with these stats? We can see there's a reason to invest in customer experience management. I want to see some nods. Go on, the three of you on screen. Yay, thank you. Brett almost nodded. He pushed his glasses up. I'm going to take it. So we're on to chapter 3. How can we manage customer experience? That's what you're here for, isn't it? Now, what I always say is there's a world of difference between intentionally managing customer experience and just letting it happen. If you don't manage your customer experience, it will still happen. It'll be random, it'll be less good, and you'll hurt eventually as a result. But the thing is, when businesses start, and coming back to passion, Brett, and that idea of values, when businesses start, there's often an idea that is the hub of why it starts. And it's very often customer facing and customer focused. But then expert support in, sales comes in, marketing comes in, logistics comes in, customer support department grows, and the customer experience actually becomes disjointed. And customers can feel the handover between departments. The difference between somebody's marketing and going through the sales process can feel like working with two different businesses. The difference between sales and being onboarded or taking the delivery can feel like two different businesses. And so growth can quite often cause a poor customer experience. And so what we look for is intentional customer experience management as soon as a business can afford to do that. And that's why my first segment is actually founders, helping founders avoid what I call the CX wall by managing customer experience as early as they possibly can. Now, I saw Brett nodding. Does everybody else, as customers, as consumers, recognise that experience of you read the marketing with one company, you sign up with another, and you get a delivery from a third? I see Christy smiling. Brittany, is that your experience too?
It is, yes.
So probably, does that make anybody happy? Does that make anybody want to go back? No. So let's try and avoid that. And the way you avoid that is you invest in customer experience management. And by investing, you get the benefits we talked about earlier. And that's what large corporations do. And they spend literally millions on customer experience strategies. Brett?
No, sorry, I was waving to Joe. Joe knows I basically have a diary conflict, so I do need. It's right. I should have been somewhere else at 12:30, but I made sure I came on to you. But I do need to make sure I make the last part of this. So I do apologise, but I look forward to the recording, and we look forward to your chats when we chat next week, Michelle.
Okay, thanks, Brett.
Going.
Hi. So there's large corporations, they're spending millions, and they're spending it on strategies, departments, and technology. Now, SMEs, none of us in the room have got millions. Though if you have, good luck to you. We haven't got millions. We can't spend £400,000 buying a voice of the customer platform for a year. We just don't have that kind of money, and we don't have the time to make it work. So what I say is, let's be appropriate to where we are as SMEs, and let's just use the basics and get started. I'm going to recommend 3 steps. You can repeat these steps. You just do them, go back, do them, go back, do them, go back, until you've got this continuous improvement, kind of small productivity gains. You can also apply it at a larger, more strategic level if you want. But do you know what? Just doing it today, it will work. Brittany, if I'm honest, it sounds like you might be ahead of this, but I think it could also still be useful for you. So let's start with step 1, understanding your customers. Now, I don't like the idea of stepping into somebody else's shoes, not just because they're sweaty and smelly, but because what will actually happen is I'll take my experience with me into that pair of shoes. I take my perceptions, I take my knowledge with me. I don't say, what will that person think? I say, oh, what would I do? How would I feel if I were in that situation? Stepping into somebody's shoes isn't a good way of understanding our customers, because we don't want to get into their feet. We want to get into their minds and understand what's happening with their lives. And the way to do that is to ask questions. It's to listen to our customers, and it's to use structured tools to bring our understanding together in one place. For example, you might get 3 pieces of feedback. Christy, I'm going to pick on you. You might get 3 pieces of feedback that say, I couldn't find the link for the Zoom call. I'm not saying you do that because you're a professional, but how many meetings have you been to where you can't find the link? Now, you might get 3 pieces of feedback. You could ignore it, or you could say, even though I think I've sent this out in a really helpful way, my customers cannot find the link. And then you move on to step 2. So I apologise, Christy, I might keep with that example because I kind of like it. Mainly because yesterday I didn't go to a webinar because I couldn't find the link. The amazing thing about understanding is we don't just build a kind of on paper wordy understanding, we actually start to build empathy. Some people won't, but most of us will build empathy as we start to understand other people in more detail. Now, I just want to be really careful, because some people, especially recently, have been saying, we don't need empathy, we need something else. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is active, and we're seeking something called compassionate empathy, and that's about understanding someone's feelings and taking appropriate action to help. Which brings us, as did the example, to step 2. In step 2, now we have the understanding and we have that desire to help. What we do is we either design from scratch or redesign our products, our services, and our customer journeys to meet those newly discovered customer needs. And remind ourselves that it's not just about the core job to be done, it's about those psychological and social needs as well. Now, I have got another example which doesn't involve Christy or Zoom in any way. Does anybody here get frustrated at an online checkout?
Oh,
All
yes.
the different screens, you have to put the data in here, you have to sign in there. Oh, it's a nightmare. Now, I do recommend you looking out for the Google video, which shows a person trying to buy bread in a real supermarket. But when it gets to the checkout person behaves like an online checkout process. And it's so funny because they insist on signing, including finding that all-important lost ID. They ask about terms and conditions and newsletters, and they offer a myriad of delivery options. It's a nightmare, and the customer walks out of the shop empty-handed. Now, the reason Google have made that video is because Google is trying to sell their analytics services and show which steps in the online checkout process lose customers. And that brings me to the example, because Best Buy noticed that they had a lot of cart abandonments, and they surveyed their customers. And what they found was that customers did not like the sign-in process, so they took it off. And they increased, I said sign in, I should have said sign up. They took it off and they increased their completed checkouts by 45%. That's not bad. That's nearly half again. That was worth to them, wouldn't be worth to me, I hasten to add, but that was worth to them $300 million. Now, it is marketing received wisdom that you need to get people to sign up in a checkout, because then you can send them newsletters. But the thing is, if that stops them buying, it doesn't matter how many newsletters you send to the other people, it's not going to make up for the customers you've lost. That was what Best Buy actually discovered. They removed the step. They made their job to be done easier. They made it more successful. And they removed a barrier to trust. I have got the link to the article about that and to the Google video if you'd like it. I think if it's okay, Jo, can I send both to you?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, with the meet your customers' needs, not with my business, but I also run networking groups, and I ask for feedback at least once a year, if not more, to find out what people want from the group, and even more so obviously over the last 3 years, because things keep changing. I have changed so much. And the biggest frustration is trying to, I know at the end of the day you can't please everybody, but it has been quite, this year I would say it's been a challenge when it comes to networking and figuring out how to get more people there, because people give me their answers and I try to do as many options that will fit, but the outcome doesn't change. It's like, you told me what you wanted, I've made the change, and I guess there will always be some frustrations. You can't please everyone.
You can't. I'll give you an interesting piece of data before we come back to your example, which is a great example, Christy. What, on a score of 1 to 5, what average score of reviews do you think is most trusted by consumers when they read a review? So say they review my website, and I've got all these reviews on Trustpilot, and my average score is X. What is the optimum value of X for me to get customers?
Well, it'd be tempting to say 5, but I'm actually going to say 4 out of 5.
It's between 4.2 and 4.7. Because people don't trust reviews where the score's higher than 4.7. Because people know you can't please all of the people all of the time. So absolutely spot on, Christy, and totally borne out.
Also, I kind of think when you look at a review that has lower than 5, you kind of get a feel of what the problem was and whether that would be a problem to you. So it kind of gives you a better understanding of what you're actually going to experience. And so like, well, that's not really going to bother me that much. So yeah, that's fine. I'll go with it. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. People are reading much more than the numbers for sure, and that's a brilliant example. Brittany, you're not on mute. Did you have something to add?
No, sorry, I just didn't mute myself.
That's okay, you don't need to mute yourself. There's only 4 of us. I just, because I can't see you, I'm not sure if you wanted to speak, so please just shout out. So that's step 2. Do something with that understanding. Now, when you read the Best Buy thing, you'll see there was a lot of steps in that process. This wasn't one of the things that took a few minutes, because besides anything else, they had to convince themselves that they weren't going to lose lots of newsletter signups. But they did it, and they made all that money. Now, step 3 is realize the benefits of managing your customer experience. Now, in a busy world, it is not enough to be better than we used to be. It's not even enough to be better than our competitors. We have to tell our customers what we've done to improve our experience and why they should spend their time and money with them. I heard a quote from the US poet Walt Whitman, and he's quite famous, not just his poetry, but he's one of the first people, sort of turn of the 19th to 20th century, he's one of the first people to really use PR. He's often credited as inventing the whole thing. And he said, the public are a thick-hided beast. You have to whack them to get your message in. Now, we have empathy with our customers and our clients all the way through this, but if you need to do a bit of whacking in step 3, that's okay. Now, the whacking is things like going back to somebody who gave you feedback and saying, this is what I've done with it. Now, Christy, in your situation, what you could do is go back to somebody and say, I've seen the feedback. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Is that going to make you more likely to attend? It's polite. It's actually learning more about your change. And there's a little bit of whack in there. We call that, you said we did. But when you get customers who give you very positive feedback, you can go back to them with upsells. Customers who are happy, customers who are loyal, customers who are in that 4 to 5 star range are more receptive to upsells. They spend more money, full stop, because they come back to you. They're more receptive to upsells. They're more receptive to cross sells. And the best bit, and I think, Brittany, this could be one for you, is existing customers are much more likely to try a new or innovative product or service from a business they trust. So if you've got something new, it might not be about marketing. It might be about going to your existing customer base and selling there first. And of course, happy customers refer. So we ask customers to give recommendations. We ask customers to give referrals. And that's what, and if I'm honest with you, realize the benefits of CXM as a step is going to be kind of like 75% marketing. But trying to avoid those things I mentioned earlier, those dark patterns. It's not forcing people into a sign up. It's not making it hard to unsubscribe. It's not bombarding people with emails. It's not assuming we have a relationship with our customers. It's about genuinely offering customers opportunities and keeping the lines of communication open. And those are the 3 chapters. So, do we have any further questions? Okay, I'm going to challenge you all. We've got 2 minutes. I'm going to start with Joe. What are you going to do differently as a result of today's conversation,
Well,
Joe?
actually, Michelle, this has come at a really great time for me. I was going to comment if nobody else had any questions, because thank you, first of all, for an excellent presentation and lots of food for thought, because I'm looking at starting a new venture that is ultimately quite a big vision in the long run. And so I'm being really quite probably what I should have done in starting up this business in the first place, but I'm doing a lot of kind of market research and exploring what people want as I kind of at each step. And my next step is kind of doing a a smaller version of my big picture as like a pop-up event. So basically my big picture is bringing together a lot of different health and wellbeing practitioners in a place like the picture behind me, where what I would like is a sort of wellness centre retreat kind of venue, sort of in sort of wooden lodges in a wooded environment. So I'm going to have to so my first kind of, I've sent out a questionnaire, getting lots of people's opinions about whether it's even there's an appetite for it at all, and also what they'd like to see. And my next step is to kind of try this sort of day event where there's lots of different things going on, but you kind of buy a ticket to get in, and almost kind of test it as I go along. So kind of do experiment with it, see what was good, see what wasn't so good, and kind of just keep evolving it that way. So it's given me lots of food for thought for how I can really use those steps to keep on growing it in a natural and organic way, because I've got no clue how I'm going to make that big picture happen. I just know that I want it to get there. So it's it's sort of evolving it as it goes, and really using that as I go along. So really been really helpful for me. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm just going to say one thing, and this is to do with the way startups are supported. They're often told to look for market needs, and I go, no, look for customer needs. Don't do market research, do customer research. I think when we talk about market, we see this nebulous mass. The market is made up of customers, and yes, you have to segment your customers. You need to understand those segments. But if you think about customer needs and rather than market needs, I think you start that change in perception that I talked about in the first chapter.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's what it has done, because it's kind of informing me. I'm using those things to inform the decisions, because it obviously goes into more detail. I just didn't, had the term I know is market research, so that's why I use that particular term.
Oh no, I'm just suggesting that you play with a different term and see if that helps.
Absolutely.
Well.
No, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Jo, and that's really good, and best of luck with that. I've got a couple of people who I think you already know, but who have some things in common with that. I'll send you their names. I think you already know them. So that helps.
Thank you.
So hopefully, Christy, that's put Jo on the spot and giving you a few minutes to think about what you're going to do as a result of today's conversation.
Well, to be honest, I was at a workshop yesterday, which was all about systems. So I think it is just taking that step back, because it's the thing is not, obviously at the moment my business is still quite small, so the customer experience, obviously it is all me, but it's not necessarily the same for every person, because obviously I'm providing and doing as much as possible for each client, but in the long run I need to have a process that's in place so that I know that I can tick everything off the list to say that I've provided the best customer experience I could provide.
That's brilliant, Christy. Absolutely brilliant. I'll give you a few bits of CX jargon for you to use on that. So you're looking at your service design. And we design our services before we automate them. We design them so we can test them, like Jo's going to do. But we also design them so that we make sure they're the best possible, as you said. And we automate them not just to save ourselves time, but to provide consistency and flexibility, because you can't please all of the people all of the time. So if you design your customer experience first, I think you're going to the quids in. Absolutely. That's really good to hear. Thank you. And Brittany.
Yes.
your turn on the hot spot. What are you going to do differently?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very similar with what Christy just discussed, but just kind of take all of this information, take a step back, and kind of really define our customer base and, what we can do to, see if we're filling our funnel or if we're meeting needs of customers, and really enhancing their customer experience. And also we're adopting a new business system within our company. Right now, we just kind of reevaluated our core values, our mission statement, and, we're putting that into launch, as of last month. So I've been kind of put in charge of taking that step back and evaluating our customer service / customer experience protocols and systems that we have in place, and just making sure, you know, they're the most effective.
Yes. And in an existing business, it's really hard to decide where to start, because you have to keep managing those things. You have to keep your strategy fresh, communicate it, behave it. You have to you've already got systems, so you need to keep them as good as possible, and at the same time taking that step back to understand customers and then communicate what you've learned about customers through the organization is also vital. So you have to do all three of those things, and I know it's difficult to juggle. One of the places where I can help, if you were interested, is that I do empathy mapping and persona work, which helps people quickly put together a picture of their segments, which they can then go out and test with customers.
Right. Yeah, we our business in particular, the construction industry, it's kind of, I would say, quote unquote, old school. So we're trying to bring that into the new age and not get stuck. It's very easy to get stuck in your ways. I mean, with any industry, but we've worked with clients for a very long time, 60+ years, and they're used to one way, but it's not always the most efficient, so just kind of.
And in B2B, I think some of the most dangerous situations is when customers have been used to something and it's not efficient and they're used to it rather than liking it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, best of luck with that. Best of luck to Christy with her automations, and to Jo with her new venture, which sounds really exciting. I've been Michelle. If you do have any further questions or you just like to get in touch, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the nice Michelle. There's 2 Michelle Spauls on there. I'm the nice one, so I'm sure you'll find me easily. And unless there's any burning questions, I know we've overrun, so I suggest we say goodbye.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and an excellent presentation. I'm really, really grateful to you for coming on today and for spending time with us and answering everybody's questions and a really excellent presentation. So thank you.